He lives. Do you see it, Guardian? Memory of reef wars long ago. Years of hubris and bloodshed. The fallen house of wolves, led by Subclass the Rabid. The song. A whirlwind dirge. A seeking song for the lost. But, lyrics does not recognize the singer. The echo. It is the echo that sings to us, Guardian. Sings of Reese through our memories. It seeks an old strength. Strength to guide the scattered through a time of doubt and wrath. But it sees now how Fickrel wields its power. False life for an army of the slain, with those like Subclass for his pawns. The echo seeks another wielder. It demands one who is worthy.
Did you miss us? We have no need of your loyalty, Rex. Look here. You face Gola, the traitor cat.
everyone, welcome back to another video. I hope y'all appreciated that little intro section, showcase, the build, a little bit of a cutscene, and I'm going to I'm going to give y'all the fashion first and foremost. Surge and Sash fashion, I'm using Gambit Sway, which is interesting. But this only drops from Gambit, does not drop from anything else. And it's a random drop as well. For my Sparrow, I'm using the Mourner with Eagle Malign to give it that bone look, and then I'm just using the Master King's Fall ship. Now, here and right now, before we get straight into this, I'm gonna put up a cutscene that'll show y'all a little bit more of the fashion and more of like a cut. Okay, now that y'all have seen that, now to kind of showcase the build here. So for the artifact, nothing much matters here except having the grenade launcher kinetic impacts, rapid impacting, concussive reload. The field revenant thing is useful. Everything else doesn't really matter. Trace evidence also kind of matters. The enemies, if anything, will be affected by Jolt, not anything else. So first and foremost here, actually before we go into the actual prismatic weapons here, being bad Juju, for the kind of Hive Doctor vibe, getting that ghostly green, and with, the bone look, I thought that'd be great. So in the arc slot, I would recommend an arc fusion rifle. Tachyon Force with controlled burst and reconstruction is probably the best you can get. I don't have it. I'm not able to craft it currently, but if you can craft it, definitely have liquid coils. And I would suggest for your mod slot having ballistics for the stability specifically. And I would recommend having charge time. But yeah, that's my number one fusion. If you can't get that, plug one is a solid option with Feeding Frenzy Reservoir Burst. Reservoir Burst literally only works on the first shot, the first shot of the magazine. It does not work for example, this has 7 in the mag. It only works for that first shot, not for the remaining 6. So if you pull it out and it's at 5, well, there's still going to be reduced damage. I'm not a huge fan of that. Another option, if you have, it's a different fusion rifle, but if you have, oh, I'm going too far ahead. But I have loaded question, auto-loading controlled burst is great as well. Or if you absolutely need to, having Midas Reckoning with Reservoir Burst is nice. But just an arc fusion rifle, but preferably Tachyon Force from Last Wish or Plug 1. Now, for the heavy weapon, we're using Wicked Sister with Envious Arsenal and Bait and Switch. I don't have Bait and Switch able to be enhanced yet, but I have Spike Nades, ironically enough. But so Wicked Sister can be obtained just by buying it from the vendor from Zavala. That's it. It drops some strikes. Very, very easy to get. If you don't want to farm for this, then you can go ahead and grab Carax's Distress from Root of Nightmares is another strand grenade launcher. If you want to use this build beyond this season, any strand heavy weapon would work, but I'd use a grenade launcher here. Carax's. If you're using a strand weapon, if you're using this outside of when this video is being uploaded, I would personally suggest putting on a strand rocket launcher with cluster bomb. You need a rocket launcher with cluster bomb if you're not using a grenade launcher. Because cluster bomb is okay for damage, especially if somebody's using Gallahorn, so you don't have to swap out necessarily, but it can fill that ad clearing role as well. Now, if you have a stasis heavy with cluster bomb, then I would suggest using Glacier Grenade and Diamond Lance instead of Knockout. Speaking of subclass stuff, let's get into it. We're using Thunder Crash as our super. for damage, but also you can use it on non-bosses as well. It's honestly probably that's my favorite super, honestly. Out of the one-off supers, it's my favorite. Now we are using Rallying Barricade. It is the quickest barricade to put up. Well, it has the lowest cooldown for Dranger Slash specifically. It helps unstoppable champions. Same with Shackle Grenade. We're not using this to kill. We're using this for mostly suspend. And Shield Throw, we are using. Shield Throw is actually massively being slept on. I do wish I had a second charge, but you can get an Overshield. Now, because we're using Knockout as well, this does increase the Shield Throw's melee range and damage. So do keep that in mind. So you can proc Knockout, then Shield Throw, or Shield Throw can proc your Knockout. You can go from, like, very, like, red health to full with some Overshield in, like, a minute. And Spirit of Contact, which we'll get to, does work with this. For our fragments, we're using the plus 10s, obviously, plus 10 resilience. Also, it can help spawn Ionic Traces, which will be nice. Facet of Justice to increase our damage when we're transcended. And we'll skip that for now, but Facet of Sacrifice is going to be important, give us that 10 discipline, but also I would not recommend having this on if you are using Glacier Grenade, but the Shackle applies a Darkness debuff. I believe it applies Suspend. So, applying that debuff will be nice. Now, bigger bosses that cannot be suspended, something called Snap will be applied to them, so, which it'll make it do a little bit extra damage. So, and then that'll help our Thunder Crash, our Shield Throw, do more damage to them. And then, we have Facet of Courage, just to help us get that Darkness energy a little bit better. A little bit more often. Now, we do have Facet of Grace on, which, first time, yes, I'm using a fragment that down stats, but, it's worth it. Defeating targets with kinetic weapons grants you bonus Transcendence energy to both light and dark. Defeating targets with your super grants you and nearby allies bonus Transcendent energy. This one isn't that second part isn't particularly useful, but since our main showcase is Bad Juju, kinetic weapons are going to be great. Now we are going to be getting extra super energy with using this, so as y'all saw in the beginning. But by the way, I'm mostly here to show y'all what the secrets are for this build. If we want to look at armor here, Resilience Recov needs to be tier 9. Do not put Resilience at tier 10. Don't. You're barely going to get increase. Anyone that tells you otherwise has not really messed around enough. But yeah, it's literally only a 3% increase. So that extra 10 can be more useful elsewhere. I would personally suggest having tier 7 discipline and more into strength. But just because of how our thing gets set up, we can't really control that. So yeah, if my perfect sets would be like as low mobility as possible, tier 9 Resil Recovery, tier 7 or tier 8 Discipline, tier 7 should be the bare minimum, and then everything else into Strength. Your intellect doesn't matter that much. Now, as we load into Grasp of Avarice to show y'all some of the unique stuff in the build, since y'all have already kind of seen how the build works and everything. So with Envious Arsenal here, with, dealing damage to both other weapons, I would suggest using the Fusion first. So you'll want to go Fusion, Pulse, Wicked Sister to get that bait and switch. Not the other way around. Bait and switch does actually give you some grace with this, and this Fusion Rifle fires extremely fast, as I will be showing you here. Now again, we are here to showcase most of the stuff, but as you can see, pretty fast, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. So, I'm not going to show this against bigger targets. Y'all have already shown how bait and switch works on the bigger, beefier boys. So we're going to get into most of the more secret stuff that I could not explain as well. So first, we got that Overshield, that immediate jolt. By the way, in that clip, I was not using Knockout. I was actually using Diamond Lance. Let's see if we can get it here. That explosion there. And hey, we got Knockout, so we can easily bada bing bada boom. Fist of Havoc has been patched. Now, and I do believe your curses do scale up with you, if that makes sense. We're just gonna grab this. And just so I can see a little bit of a control for it. We already have our super. So yeah, there's that. You know, Bad Juju does have a little thing where those cursed draw explosions will be happening. The Jolt can stop overload champions. And the Shackle can obviously do unstop. Now, being realistic here, if you're like, hey, Hot Sauce Man, I want to do a little bit more than overload and unstop, I need some barrier in there. At that point, put on an anti-barrier shotgun. Anti-barrier shotgun. That's my best advice to you. Unfortunately, Titans cannot actually proc Radiant, Unraveling, or Volatile that well. Especially with this build specifically, we're not using a strand weapon. And Unraveling rounds can only be applied to strand weapons. Radiant is a little bit challenging, and the problem with getting Radiant is powered melee hits against targets makes you Radiant. Final blows make you nearby allies Radiant. The issue with this is it lowers strength, and we don't really have enough strength to do this. An alternative build you can use is especially if you want to do more, if you want to do all 3 champions with just one ability, just use Frenzied Blade instead of Drangers, use Consecration, use Thruster, and use this Stoicism. Inmost Contact. It is flat out the best role. Period. Another really good role is Ambient and Star Eater. But Thunder Crash does a lot of damage without Star Eater, so Contact is just flat out better. In my opinion, in this column, you should be looking for Inmost or Ambient. And in this column, you should be looking for Contact or Star Eater. Any combination of those will do you really good. Star Eater, not necessarily. If you're using Star Eater, I massively suggest using Bad Juju. But it's just not super easy to not just use your super. Because that is the caveat to using Star Eater, is not using your super. So, and you have to stay alive as well. So, it's pretty punishing. But, you know, I prefer Spirit of Contact. But the reason for this is Consecration is interesting. So if you have on Faster to Dawn, the Consecration will make you Radiant. So you have the anti-barrier there. The Slam Down will, because you're igniting the Scorch, it'll stop unstoppable champions. And because the Uppercut jolts, it will also stun overloads. So yes, Consecration can do all 3 champions. You have the Jolt on Overload, you have the Unstop by the Ignition, and then you have the Barrier because you're giving yourself Radiant. So yeah, Prismatic Titan can technically do all 3 with just one ability. But the issue here is without Consecration, it's just simply not viable to do all 3. At max, you can do Unstop Overload. You can't do Barrier for the most part. But yeah, there is the build. Also, if y'all are curious about the emblem does come from Ghost of the Deep. But on that note, let me know what y'all think of the style that this had. I know it's quite different than what I usually do, but let me know what y'all think of the style in the comments below. Up next is, I don't know if I'm going to post it before or after, but I am going to do, since Stellar Blade released a photo mode or whatever, Stellar Blade is going to be having, well, I'm going to be looking at some bosses here. I'm going to put them on the channel. There's 2 bosses in particular that I'm going to be kind of looking at with photo mode and kind of cheesing it to where I can look at certain things and, you know, show out some interesting details that I noticed. And we're going to be picking up a Covame. This is going to be, and again, the subclass stuff will be coming soon. On that note, thanks for tuning in, and I will catch y'all on the flip side.